Good day, Industrial Advisor listeners, and thank you for tuning in. If you have not subscribed, please do so by clicking subscribe wherever you podcast. Click the like button and hit the bell if you want notifications of when we put up new content. Leave us a comment about anything we discuss here today or general comments about the show. Now, let's get into it.
All right, welcome to another 5-Minute Friday. You have Bill Condon and Matt McGregor, Industrial Advisors Podcast. Today's 5-Minute Friday topic is the best cold call or your favorite cold call that you've ever made or that I've ever made. And we've probably both made, thousands and thousands of cold calls in our careers.
Yes.
So there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good stories, on both sides of the fence. But what's the one that stands out in your career to you the most?
Yeah, the most memorable ones are, in your first year, right? Because you don't know any better.
Right? You don't know. You're not afraid to call anybody.
There's no rules.
You don't know.
Yes.
You're just like, you don't know what you don't know, so you're just calling whoever.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I cold called this guy, had a building up in South Seattle, and he said, hey, I'm going to give you the listing. I was blowing him up. I was 3 months in the business, blowing him up, sent him the listing agreement, he's supposed to sign it. It was a done deal, right? He calls me up at 8 a.m. on Friday, and that was the day I was supposed to pick up the contract. He's like, hey, Matt, I got good news and bad news for you. He said, the bad news is I'm going to sell the building. I got an offer off market from a user, and, that's the bad news. I'm thinking, well, what possibly could be the good news?
Yeah.
Right? And he said, the good news is I'm going to give you till 5 o'clock to beat it, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And I'm like, I'm young and dumb. So I'm like, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no question I'm going to find
it's going to happen. So I hang up, and, at the time I had, two business partners. I jump up and I'm like, hey guys, we got an opportunity, and I tell them, they're like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what are you talking about? 5 o'clock? Like, who are you going to sell this building to? And this was before institutions were buying small buildings. So It wasn't like you're going to pick up the phone. You needed a user. Good luck. Right. So I'm like, these guys are Debbie Downers. I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to go find a buyer for this building, right? So I go drive to the building, which was like, 10 minutes from my office. And I do what I didn't know was the right thing to do at the time, but I start door knocking the neighbors, right? And I walk into the next door neighbor. It was like my second call that day. And by this time it's 9 a.m. And
the countdown's like
the countdown's going. Yeah. I got a deal here.
Yeah.
And so I say to the lady, well, can I talk to, this person in here and the general manager? And I got the building available next door. And so she walks in. She's like, he'd like you to call on him next week and he'd love to talk to you about it. And I said, well, actually, I have to talk to him now. Let him know that we have to talk now or that building's going to trade. So I see them. She runs back in his office and he's like, what? And so he lets me in, and so I tell him the story and I tell him the price I need, and I'm like, are you interested? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm interested, but you're saying I have to do this today?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, you and I are in the same boat, right? And so I explained the situation. Fast forward a few hours later, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we had this under contract. 30 days later, closed on that building and made $150,000 on that cold call. But better than that, the combined two companies I still do deals with, as you know.
Yeah.
Probably done over 30 or 40 deals combined between those two companies over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I am personally glad that you decided to pursue that. Yeah. That's a great story.
Call the neighbor.
Yeah. Always call the neighbor. Mine, we've had a lot of good calls, but one that stands out the most was I was about 6 months into the industry. And we had this guy, Dave Hibbard, who we've had on our podcast before, come in and do live cold calling training for our office. And I was not afraid to call anyone at that. Like, I was just not intimidated. And so we were doing breakout sessions where he'd send you out in groups and you'd have to do live calls. And so I was up, and it was a company called Pacific Crest Cabinets at the time that had since changed their name. And I call on the guy, and I'm using his, ride the bull tactics. And I finally get to the guy, and guy's like, yeah, I'm kind of, working with a guy. And I was at Colliers, and the guy had just left Colliers like 3 months ago.
Wow.
And at that, had he been at Colliers at that time, there's no way I could have.
Done.
You're done. So I said, well, I'd still love to meet with you, put a name with the face, and see if there's a way for us to help you. And he said, okay. Friday morning, whatever. So anyway, I go down and meet with him and just stay super persistent with him. A couple weeks later, he tells me, the requirement and says, you know what, I'm ready to work with you. And so what that turned into being was, and again, I'm 6 months into the business at the time. He owned a 60,000 footer, but he wanted to triple his size. And so he went down, we ended up doing a build-to-suit in Sumner for 190,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sold his existing Kent building. And since then I've done, I don't know, 8 to 10 deals with this particular group. And most importantly, they've turned into friendship. Most importantly, they've turned into just great friends and people that are really important to me in my life. So anyway, that was by far and away my favorite cold call.
Yes,
for a lot of reasons. So just a couple of cold calling stories that have worked out really well.
Yeah. Well, happy Friday, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Yep.